Your mileage may vary. The 4 words that you'll hear me and plenty of other folks in the automotive world utter at least once or twice a month when relating to how far a vehicle can travel per charge, or how many miles per gallon it manages off a tank of fuel, or how quickly it can refuel. That phrase is usually paired with some official fuel economy rating or other, and is meant to remind customers that while a vehicle may be listed as having a particular fuel economy on the window sticker, those ratings should be used as guidance only. It's something that we'd hope the majority of consumers understand today. But when we heard this week that a man from South Dakota is suing Chevrolet for misrepresenting the range of their Bolt EV, well, we figured it was time for a refresher course, as we are going to explain why we don't think he'll win. But before I do that, let's look at the particulars of this case. It started when the plaintiff purchased a Chevrolet Bolt on November 21st, 2017 from Billion Auto. That's a Chevrolet dealership in Iowa City, Iowa. When he purchased the car, he said that its literature indicated the car had a range of 238 miles per charge, and also claims at no point was he informed that the range was, quote, inaccurate. But as winter arrived, he soon discovered that, during the brutally cold winters that South Dakota and other Midwestern states normally experience, his Bolt EV was producing a range that, at its worst, was 100 miles shorter than the car's official EPA rating. He's accusing GM, Chevrolet's parent company, of fraudulent misrepresentation, selling a vehicle with manufacturing and design defects, and some other things that I'm not going to get into here. The original lawsuit, which was filed in South Dakota, also seeks to find other plaintiffs in Midwestern states who suffered similar range drops in winter in order to bring a class action suit against GM. GM has petitioned the case to be moved to the US federal court, where it hopes it will be dismissed. GM's legal team is calling the allegations, quote, vague, conclusory, and inadequately pled under the pleading standards of the federal rules. Those are the facts as I understand them at this moment, and while I'm not a legal scholar or a lawyer, I personally don't think the plaintiff has a chance of winning, because fuel economy figures have always been subjective and will continue to be for many years, because they're derived from a laboratory test under ideal conditions, not real-world situations. Sure, they are designed to be as close to real-world as possible, and yes, I'll agree that that's debatable as to how close, but the fact is they can't account for every single situation. And it's not a new thing either. For years, automakers have been making cars and selling cars whose window sticker fuel economies aren't the same as the fuel economies that you would get in the real world. That's because weather, road conditions, terrain, and driving style, not to mention the total onboard weight, can all impact how far a car travels on a given amount of fuel. Every vehicle manual I've read in the last decade or more says something to that effect, somewhere in its pages at least once, if not more. I'm also aware of how nerdy I am for actually reading vehicle manuals. But hey, I'm making a video for a YouTube channel wearing a t-shirt with a fictional immortal time-traveling border collie on it, so honestly, not bothered. While the performance of each vehicle is impacted by changes in weather, road conditions, terrain, and driving style, you tend to notice it less in an internal combustion engine vehicle than a battery electric one, because battery electric vehicles don't travel as far per fill, even if the electric vehicle drivetrain is far more efficient than internal combustion engined ones. And so you're filling it up more frequently and notice. I should at this point also acknowledge a few things about winter driving and electric cars. If a car uses a resistive heater like the Chevrolet Bolt EV does, you will see the range drop more in winter than you might if your car used a heat pump, as heat pumps are far more efficient and use less energy to keep the cabin warm than a resistive system. If your car has any form of active battery heating or cooling that uses energy to keep the battery pack conditioned, you'll also see the car use some of its stored battery pack energy to keep said battery pack at an optimum operating temperature. If the temperature outside is -30, as it was in parts of the winter for the Midwest, then the car will be running its battery conditioning heating full pelt to keep the battery pack healthy and happy, which will slowly get rid of range. A way around this, and the cabin needing to be heated up, is to plug the car in when you're not using it. Then it will pull electricity from the mains to keep both the battery pack warm and, when you tell it to, precondition the cabin. And because physics say it takes less energy to keep the cabin warm than it does to heat it up in the first place, range will be impacted less in the winter if you heat the car first. I should also note that keeping your car plugged in the winter isn't just something that electric car owners in super cold places do, because block heaters for internal combustion engine vehicles also reduce wear on the engine on startup. They also help keep the car healthy. So if you live in a super cold state, it's not like you've never seen a car plugged in while parked in the winter before. It appears that the plaintiff in this case either didn't know these facts, either due to a lack of interest, research or naivety, or just didn't bother to follow what is now standard electric vehicle advice for driving in winter. As for the whole chasing after GM for advertising a range that is allegedly false, as I've said before, if you don't like range ratings, you need to go after the regulators setting the rules for those range ratings, not the car companies for following them. So my advice, if you're buying any car of any fuel type, do your research, ask smart questions and read the manual. You might learn something. Oh, and as I've said before, your mileage may vary. Always take official economy ratings with a significant margin of error to adjust for changing weather, driving styles and road conditions. That's it. Thanks for watching. Let us know if you liked it or didn't like it below. Scribble a comment, hit the notification bell and support us with Patreon, Ko-fi or by grabbing some swag from our swag shop. I'll be back soon with another episode, but until then, keep evolving.